Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
This is, of course, a rare oasis among political analysis. It's what you do, not what I do, on the British media at the moment, because we have managed to resist the temptation to blame absolutely everything, from the price of eggs right through to the weather, on immigration. I've said to you a million times, it's the biggest gift you can give a politician, to allow the immigration obsession out of the bottle, to allow the sort of plausible peddlers of half-truths and exaggerations to move into the mainstream. Because once you do that, everything, absolutely everything, the sewers, traffic jams, wages, everything, NHS, schools, everything. That's why not only the absence of a let me choose my words very carefully in a vain attempt to head off the abuse at the bars. If there was a more I can't say credible because you'll get cross, effective, similarly, if there was better,
the teachers we have. If we're going to have teachers who are going to teach French and Spanish to our kids,
theoretically, this government would be getting kicked from pillar to post at the moment. All of the open goals that you've got, effectively, to move in on, are all being missed for reasons that I don't understand, and which the people who claim to understand why they're all being missed think it's all my fault and the fault of the biased media. But you've got the absence of credible opposition, and you've got the immigration genie. It's just carte blanche for a government to do whatever the hell it wants, which is why I'm so confused about the reaction to Philip Hammond, although I think we may have come close to solving it in the last hour. I mention that because it means sometimes there's a temptation not to talk about immigration-related issues because everybody else is endlessly. It's the most amazing emblem of the sort of what would you call it? The confluence of fake news and lies. Is this notion that even now, the people who never shut up about immigration, in the same breath will say, oh, and you can't talk about immigration in this country. It's quite incredible to anybody who's got even a semblance of objectivity and rationality to hear people saying that the sky is falling in 1 minute and calling chicken licking stupid the next. It's quite bizarre. Oh, you can't talk about immigration in this country, says someone who literally talks about nothing else ever. But there we are. It means that perhaps we don't talk about it as much as we might in a more level universe. But we're going to talk about it today because there's a story that has come along which both sides, people who think, and again, you can't look at anything on the British political landscape at the moment unless you look at it through the lens of Brexit. You have a story here that both sides, people who are not spooked by immigration and people who are utterly convinced that it's the root of all evil, and everybody in between, can all construe as being somehow evidence that they're right. In a way, that's the perfect story for a radio phone-in. A story that is essentially about quite a binary issue, and both sides can use it to shore up their own position. What's the story, Morning Glory? You know what the story is. I've already told you twice. I said we were going to talk about pret-a-manger in the next hour. I wasn't, as some of you seem to believe, inviting you to tell me your lunch orders. 1 in 50 job applicants at pret-a-manger is British. 1 in 50. Now, the massive majority of pret-a-manger branches, I think the majority of them are in London, but they're all in big towns. The bigger the town or city, the more likely it is to have a pret. The bigger it is, the more it will have. There are some parts of London where you can walk 200 yards and see 2 or 3 branches of this sandwich chain. And very, very rarely do you meet somebody British in there. Very rarely do you get served by somebody British. Now, I don't need to tell you, this is something that I only notice because stories like this come along. I do not really register the nationality of someone by serving me a sandwich. I just register whether they've done a good job, whether they're smiling, whether they're surly, whether they're apparently grateful for my custom, or at least doing a good job of pretending to be. But some people, of course, care passionately. The point is, if you told me that 25 out of 50 job applicants at Pret-a-Manger were British, but only 1 out of 50 got the job, then I'd think it was a very different story. If this was being held up as evidence of British people being squeezed out of a job application process by foreigners, then you could make quite a powerful argument to say, well, we've got too many foreigners. Because look, there's 25 British kids applied for these 50 jobs and only one of them got it. But that's not what we're saying. There's 50 jobs, 50 job applicants, 49 of them come from overseas. They're almost always young, let's make that clear. These are people who are happy to live in shared houses, people who are happy to put in a long commute. So working in a big, vibrant, bustling city, and their social life is probably the second most important thing on their expenditure list after their living expenses. You know that. You just go into a branch. And they're from all over the world. It's not confined to the EU by any stretch of the imagination. So the question I've got for you is why? Why? Why of the 50 people applying for a job at Pret a Manger is only one British? We did, again, I keep having to refer back to programmes we made before things went a bit bonkers in terms of people listening to the programme at the moment. And we did this in the old-fashioned way about 5 years ago. And took a lot of callers from employers who were telling me that young British people were considerably less attractive applicants than some of their European counterparts. There's a sort of logic to that, in that the kind of mindset that sees you leave home for a year or 3, pack up your troubles in your old kit bag, cross a channel, cross a continent to come to a city because you think it's cool and you want to live there, you are by definition going to be perhaps made of slightly more vibrant stuff than someone who's still living at home in your old bedroom from when you were a child with your Emlyn Hughes, actually that's showing my age, with your Michael Owen posters on the wall, and you're wondering why you can't get a job. There's some sympathy in that analysis. I feel sorry, if you will. But I don't understand why only 1 in 50. So that programme we made a few years ago, a young woman rang me up who was furious. Absolutely furious. She was breaking her back to get a job, she said, and failing and trying really hard. Not in London, and she had travel issues that meant a job in central London at Pret a Manger wasn't something that she would really have contemplated. Although you can commute into London from quite far off towns in less than an hour, it'll still cost you a lot of money. And we helped her out. I think she wanted to be a graphic designer. She'd done graphic design at college, and I think she got a job in a local cinema, and we got a replacement at a graphic design company that was nearby. And sometimes these kids just needed a break. And I don't like the narrative that a lot of people follow, because what you've got to remember is that before immigration was the reason for everything that's wrong in this country, it was fecklessness. Do you remember this? While I've been in this shift, it used to be that I had to come on air every morning and explain why unemployed people weren't the spawn of Satan and responsible for everything that was wrong in this country. It used to be that I had to come on air every morning and explain why young people who can't find a job often don't deserve to be pilloried for it. This is a previous regime who was setting the scene for, do you remember? You have to go and work unpaid in a supermarket that clears several £100 million a year, because if you don't go and work unpaid in the supermarket, you won't get your unemployment benefits. God, I'm almost nostalgic for those days where I would come on air every morning and explain, in contrast to what the tabloid media was saying, that young people are not all feckless, work-shy layabouts with a sense of entitlement and a deep belief that they're going to be the next star of Towie, and that's why they're not going to go out and do a proper day's work. Do you remember? That's what I used to have to do. I don't have to do that anymore because immigrants are getting the blame for everything. But a story like this brings them both together, both of those ostensibly demonised constituencies. And I don't know the answer to the question. I actually haven't got a clue what the answer is, except the possibility, as the people that run Pret a Manger have expressed, that shops like that are going to shut. Because if 1 in 50 applicants is British and we're reducing the number of non-British people coming into the country, there aren't any people in the queue to replace them. They'd be there already, wouldn't they? So when you hear the Director of Human Resources at a massive employer like Pret saying, if I had to fill all our vacancies in British-only applicants, I would not be able to fill them because of the lack of applications. This is in evidence, testimony that she gave to the Economic Affairs Committee. The difficulty, it's not in selecting, it's attracting. So it's not as if they've got a bunch of people to choose from and they're choosing foreign applicants because, well, you know, they're better or they're more motivated or they're more grateful for the work or they're more comfortable living in kind of student-style accommodation as they try and earn a crust to carry on their travels or to get a deposit for a place of their own. No, it's not that. They're not even applying. And this is to work in pret-a-manger. We're living in a country at the moment where people are arguing we should be training up our own people to replace doctors and nurses who come from overseas, and we can't even find people who want to serve sandwiches. I don't understand why. I do increasingly believe that a lot of the conversations that we have are addressing a universe or a society that doesn't really exist, where there are loads and loads of unemployed young British people who can't get a job because all the polls are in front of them in the queue. I don't know that these young British people actually apply for these jobs that Polish people are getting. I just don't know, because when I read about this, and I work in the West End of London, and there are help wanted signs in almost every window of almost every food outlet that you see. And yet, I think they should get paid more. And I understand the rhetoric of people saying, well, the reason why they don't get paid more is because of all the immigrants. But the evidence doesn't back that up. And if I'm Polish and I can afford to live in a shared house and work in a shared house in Penge and work in pret-a-manger in Covent Garden, why can't I do that as a Brit? Is it mobility? Are we actually going to end up wondering whether Norman Tebbit, of all people, had a point? And the reason why there is only 1 in 50 British applicants for a job at Pret-a-Manger is that a young British person who hasn't got a job doesn't want to contemplate leaving the home they're currently in, which is probably their mum and dad's. Is it? Oh, man, I've got to stop doing this. If that turns out to be the answer, we've got quite a long 45 minutes ahead of us. So tell me about your son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter. Ideally, tell me about yourself. But why? That's all. That's all I've got. Why? 50 job applicants for a decent job, nice environment, very good morale, workforce in Pret-a-Manger. Always seem to be having a good time. They always seem to be bantering and having fun with each other. Why wouldn't a British kid apply for that job? Answer: he'd rather stay unemployed, living at home, than make the move from wherever it might be to live somewhere where working in a big city, working in a big town becomes attractive. I don't know. I should stop putting words into your mouth. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 0345 60 973. 11:15 is the time. And if you're an employer, I don't want you to ring me up and tell me that the British applicants you get are vastly inferior to the foreign applicants, unless it's true. Because if it's true, we need to know, and we need you to tell us. I used to take calls from a lovely gentleman who ran a sporting goods shop on the King's Road in London, but he went under a few years ago, and he was the first person to tell me, with great reluctance, because I think, if memory serves, he was an immigrant himself. I could have got that bit wrong. Apologies if you're listening, sir. I think he was the first person to tell me that he actually can't find staff, young staff, to work in his nice, prestigious shop in one of the loveliest parts of London. The only staff he can find are coming in from overseas. And you don't need me to remind you what Britain has just voted to do, to have less of them, fewer. So what's going to happen to your business? Genuinely, what would happen to your business if the flow of European Union workers were to be cut off or vastly reduced? 0345 60 973. It's 11:16. One word question for you today. Only 1 in 50 job applicants at Pret-a-Manger is British. Question: why? Richard's in Harlow. Richard, what have you got?
Hi, mate. With regards to that, I just feel that jobs like Pret-a-Manger are just not glamorous enough for young British people. And it's the fact of the pay structure, the times, you know, the social aspect of it. Why would they want to work it?
Yeah, but it's got to be better than nothing, hasn't it?
Well, you try to tell that to a 19-year-old British boy who wants to buy expensive Nike trainers and, you know, all the fashion.
Well, they pay more than the national living wage. So your first job, and I'm happy to take a lesson from you with your, I think you're a lot younger than me. My first job, full-time, 100 quid a week, River Island, Worcester High Street. I couldn't probably have afforded to do much if I didn't live at home with mum and dad at the time. So I was lucky to get a job near home. But to get more than the national living wage on your first ever job, that's a result, isn't it?
Well, it is. I mean, I'm a person of age myself who respects, you know, and works hard for his money. But I find young people today, they just want quick, fast, easy money. And, you know, to get your hands dirty for such a low wage, which they would look at, you know, why are they going to do it with unsociable hours?
But what are they going to do instead?
I'll tell you what, you go around to North West London, you see what young kids are doing, whether it's, you know, breaking the law or Do you know?
It's not that. What's the alternative to working in pret-a-manger is being a mugger? I mean, this is...
Well, it's not about being a mugger, but there's other things going on. You see the youth of today, they just want quick money.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
Oh, okay. You sound younger. I thought I was going to tease you then for talking about the youth of today when you were about 24 years old. What were you on per hour when you started? Are you in catering?
I am in catering, yes. Look, I'm on minimum. I was working at minimum wage, but I was making tips on top. But I would have to work, constantly through whatever stress and pressures, the way people speak to me. It's a far from glamorous job. Unsociable hours, a lot of stress, and kids nowadays, I just feel they don't want to put that sort of effort.
See, I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with this analysis that kids they've got ideas above their station, or they've got kind of a bad work ethic. And yet you're a 30-year-old man, you work in the industry. I can't really... I mean, you know a lot more about this than I do.
I see it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Young British kids do not want to work hard. With all due respect to foreign nationals, they really put effort in for little money they make.
Why?
I just think I just think British kids have been given too much. And they expect too much. I get the impression they feel that they're self-deserving.
And if we've added into that mix the mother of all excuses when they find they can't, their dreams aren't going to come true, we've given them a free pass to blame it all on immigration.
Well, I'm saying immigration hasn't helped. I'm saying there's a lot of unskilled labour in the country, and
But why aren't they applying for these jobs? You can't have it both ways. They're not applying for a job that is bigger than national living wage.
Because an unskilled job like that isn't paying the money. They're looking at it as the fact that why am I going to work unsociable hours, be treated in a certain way for such little? Why would they? You've got to be in catering. You've got to have.
No, I've been there, mate. I know exactly what it's like. The hours are absolutely shocking, and depending on pret-a-manger, at least you have fixed hours. It's not like working in a restaurant or even in a pub sometimes, where the hours can extend beyond what you thought you were going to be working. Okay, Richard, 30 years old, works in catering. First answer is because the British kids don't think it's glamorous enough for them. Ed in Stockport writes, if pret-a-manger isn't glamorous enough, what the hell does a no qualifications kid think is glamorous and attainable? And that's the answer. And then you bring the Brexit, I beg your pardon, the immigration genie into the picture. You're raising a generation of children whose expectations have essentially been robbed from them, or at least they've been sold an utterly unrealisable dream, and we're now giving them the excuse, which will lead to more division. Post-Brexit, who's going to do these jobs? Julie is in Bideford. I love Bideford. What would you like to say?
I actually have 3 hotels. I have one in Bideford, one in Paynton, and one in Street in Somerset.
Lovely.
And a high proportion of my staff over the last 15 years that I've had hotels have predominantly been foreign staff, because basically they do want to work. I'm in a situation now with post-Brexit and everything that my agencies that I get staff from are not supplying staff because they think that we're a country that hates foreign workers, and they don't come over because they feel that they're going to be unwelcome here. So I have no. I've
been reading my tweets.
Yeah, and I honestly, I do. When I put a job advert in, I put it in a British website, and I also put it with agencies that bring foreign staff. I'll give you last month, for example. In the hotel in Devon, I employ 55 staff.
Yes.
Of those 55 staff, like I said, they're predominantly now where the foreign workers are going home and whatever, because they're really they don't.
Is this since June of last year that you've detected a real drop-off?
Absolutely. So of 55 staff, I placed an advert in a job centre.
Yeah.
For a night porter, one position, okay? So of that, I had 4 interviews on Monday, 4 on Tuesday, 4 on Wednesday, all British workers,
yes.
All British people looking for work.
Yes.
Monday, none turned up. Tuesday, none turned up. Wednesday, 1 turned up. And the problem is now what they're using, British workers, and I'm British, I've worked all my life. I've worked from the age of 13 in the catering industry, and I've worked my way up, and I'm proud to say I've made myself a millionaire by doing it.
Yeah.
But by hard work and grafting.
Clearly.
We don't even let youngsters of this country get a job at 13. I have to get a work permit. They're only
don't go too far off the track, because you're right,
okay.
and that worries me slightly, because I, like you, started working very young, and I want my girls to do the same. But you can understand why.
Work ethic. And now we're in a situation where why, it's worrying keeping the hotels, because I'm going to have no staff. I'll have staff that might turn up on Tuesday, Wednesday. The weekend comes, they go out, they get drunk, they don't bother to come in. They don't phone you till 2 days later, a British worker, and then say, I'll come back.
I'm profoundly uncomfortable with this conversation, and I suspect you are as well, because, I mean, this notion, here we go again, lazy millennials don't like work and they expect everything on a plate. But you have a couple of hundred, you've got 300 staff. You're foreign workers, and I've got no reason to doubt you. Quite the opposite, in fact. I think what you're telling me, you're wishing it wasn't true. Your foreign staff are feeling less welcome. They're tailing off. You're going to have vacancies you can't fill. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Oh, come on. Well, what have we done, Julie?
Yeah, it's there, and it is true. And I'm ashamed, yeah? I'm ashamed myself. Because
what about if you paid more? That's the other argument. Oh, you're a millionaire. Why don't you share some of that around?
Paying more. Yeah, my last adverts that I did was paying more money, and it's still the same. They apply for the job because it gives them a tick to get their benefit, and then you don't even see them for the interview. I phone the job centre because I'm that outraged by it. I phone the job centre and I say to them, these people haven't turned up for a job. The answer to that is it's not their department. I said, well, whose department is it then? Because I have real jobs here to give people, and futures, and apprenticeships, but they don't want them.
Oh, blimey. I hate you. I hate you, Julie, because I hate you. I've got nothing to say now. I'm just sitting here feeling all dismal.
Last month alone, I started and finished 20 British people who started work for me and who worked 2 days and didn't come back. 20 45
the weekend comes.
In 1 month.
Briefly,
I've had in a year.
What's your favourite country of origin for workers, just out of interest?
It doesn't matter.
No, I know.
Lithuanian, Polish, they're all fantastic workers.
And they are genuine. Where else are they going instead if they're not coming to Devon?
They're not coming to the UK. My agency, who has staff, say that people aren't happy to travel over here.
Because of the atmosphere and the just because the simple fact of the Brexit vote.
Obviously, we don't know how we're being portrayed abroad, are we?
Well, no, we do know one big thing. They call it freedom of movement. We call it immigration. That right there, just in the syntax, just in the semantics, you've got a massive difference. Julie, can I ask the name of the hotel in Bideford or not?
Durrant House Hotel.
All right, can I pop in? Can I have a free half pint of bitter?
And if anybody's looking for a job and actually wants to work, I have live-in accommodation. Please apply, yeah?
Right, but look, there you go, right? Listen, I know sometimes it seems like a stuck record. 300 staff advertising for people to come and work for her. What's the problem in this country? Oh, too many immigrants, James. Here's an interesting headline. Leaked emails reveal Nigel Farage's long-standing links to Julian Assange. If you have a look at the Business Insider website, you can see a fascinating piece by Adam Bienkov. When he got photographed yesterday outside the Ecuadorian embassy, I thought he'd gone there to try and do a citizen's arrest on Julian Assange, because you know how much he cares about men who've been accused of sexual assaults in Sweden. It's a massive, massive issue for him. He's really, really worried about all the sexual assaults that have been committed in Sweden. So when I saw him photographed outside the Ecuadorian embassy with a friend and colleague of mine, I thought, finally, he's doing the right thing. They've gone to try and bring him to justice because they care so passionately about Swedish sex crimes. Oh, what a shame. It couldn't possibly be, could it, that if a white man is accused of committing a rape in Sweden, he's cool with it, but if a brown man is, it's massive internet? No. Perish the thought. That would be ridiculous. I'm sure the truth will out, and it'll have a perfectly innocuous explanation for why British politicians should have been seeking succour from a fugitive from justice accused of sex crimes in Sweden. Watch this space. Let's get back to that grim picture painted by Julie in Bideford. Absolutely. And what Julie did, of course, is shoot you down in flames if you were thinking of ringing me up and say, I'll tell you why only 1 in 50 job applicants at Pret-a-Manger is British, James. It's because British people can't afford to live and work in London on the pittance that they get paid by Pret-a-Manger. Julie's got 2 hotels in Devon, 1 in Somerset. She can't get staff for love nor money. British staff don't even turn up for the interviews, and the foreign staff that she used to employ are just not coming anymore. Why? Well, you work it out. They run the risk of getting punched in the face for daring to speak their native language on a train. That's the country we're creating at the moment. This, by the way, is me spreading hatred and division, if you're subscribing to the I know you are, but what am I school of political argument. So she's offering accommodation digs and pay at a hotel in Devon. So the argument about you can't afford to keep a roof over your head unless you live 17 to a room, well, it's bogus. But I think out of respect for people who believe the lies rather than people who tell them, it's very important to make that clear. So why? Where are they going? What's going on? And don't forget, these kids, and I am on their side, these kids who aren't turning up for a job as a night porter in Julie's hotel, they're the kids we're going to train up to be doctors and nurses and research scientists and teachers. They're the kids that we're going to train up to fill all the jobs, the big jobs currently done by immigrants. The ones that can't be asked to turn up for a job as a night porter at a hotel in Devon. Olivia's in Hampstead. Olivia, what would you like to say?
Hi, I was just thinking that's a bit of an unfair statistic to use because...
Which one?
If you look for the Pret-a-Manger, just that 1 in 50 people. Because also it's a large chain, you know, how many branches of Pret-a-Manger you have across...
it wasn't me that did it. It was their director of human resources.
I'm saying it's not a fair reflection of young British worker. Me being a young British worker myself.
Yes.
You know, when I started applying for jobs, I applied for Pret-a-Manger, I applied for Le Pan Quotidien, I applied for Euphoria.
How did you get on?
Well, basically what happened is you get put into a pool.
Yes.
And so you're basically, you don't get to go somewhere local. You are put depending on what is available. So, you know, I might have had to trek up to central London to go for a job or whatever. And so I just applied for all the local jobs near my house. And the ones that I chose were the small local businesses who would have me. You know, so for me, it was the same.
So yes, I said mobility is going to be crucial here. You weren't prepared to travel as far as other people are.
Of course, but
some people are going to get the job before they get the digs, aren't they? They're probably going to crash with a mate until they get a job, and then they're going to find a room that suits where the job is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But what I'm saying is that I don't think it doesn't really reflect young British workers, because if you put together, say, all the small businesses that young British workers actually do.
But you just heard Julie, my previous caller is
one example.
Well,
you know,
okay,
that's not necessarily.
Well, it's 300 staff she's got. You're one person, so we're 299 down on the deal.
I also go to university with so many young British workers who, you know, they're at university as well as going to jobs the entire time, earning money. You know, that they haven't had everything handed to them on a plate. They're paying for their accommodation, they're paying to get an education, and they're also working hours and hours a week.
And they've got loans coming out. They've got loans coming out their ears, and for them to be painted as somehow feckless or entitled. But I don't know who we're talking about when we use this phrase, young British people, because you're talking about undergraduate jobs. You're talking about jobs you do to subsidise yourself while you're studying, and you're studying in the hope of getting a job that is superior to the job that you're doing now. That's a statement of fact, right? What these employers are struggling to do is find people who are doing this as their full-time main livelihood. And you're right, Julie is only one employer, although my switchboards are groaning under the weight of other people ringing in with similar stories. The problem is, why are these people not like you, not from middle-class backgrounds, not university students, people who are choosing not to work rather than do this sort of work? And I think unwittingly you've touched upon the answer. They won't move. They won't move out of their mum's back bedroom.
No, because it's far too expensive for them. But
Julie just said she was providing accommodation.
Yeah, well, that is one example, and that's in Devon. And
Somerset.
That's another thing, I think, to do with the education system, you know. If people don't have the incentive to work and they don't have that drive, then that's something to do with how they've been raised with the education system, because how can they be... You're only really... it's a nurture over nature. So, you know, if they haven't been raised to have that work drive and that, then they won't actually try and get a job or stick at it or whatever. So if you're saying that, then
you feel that you feel that when you hear people describing these young British non-workers, as it were, you feel that you're being tarred with that brush, and I understand why, and you're not, because you've got a job.
Yeah, and it's not just me. Like, I mean, obviously...
No, I know. It's your friends at university and your peer group and your sort of... I could patronise you now by saying your neighbours in Hampstead, but I won't. But we're not talking about them. We're talking about people who would rather not work for reasons that are utterly baffling to you and to me than do a job in Pret-a-Manger. And you may well be right. It's got a lot to do with mobility, but that's why I'm ruling out the undergraduate argument, because this is supposed to be young British people who want a job being squeezed out by foreigners who come in and get it, but there's 49 foreigners applying. and only one British person for every vacancy. That's incredible. Charlie's in Rochester. Charlie, what's going on?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello, Charlie.
Basically, not to contradict, but also touch on some of the points Olivia made. I'm 24 years old at the moment. Obviously, I can't speak for a generation, but I can only speak from my personal experience.
You'll never be a phone-in host, Charlie.
Exactly. Well, let's
just as well. Yeah, be careful. Watch what you say.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, but I can't talk about my background. I mean, don't get me wrong. I realise I'm sort of maybe a more privileged background than others might be. So I've been very fortunate to have, good contact as soon as I came out of school. I did work various jobs through school. I've worked on a farm. I've worked in retail. I just don't think the argument I want to make, basically, James, I don't think it's fair to just tarnish a whole generation of young British people.
No, nor do I. But I mean, it's no good ringing me up telling me not to do it. We need to provide evidence, because you and Olivia are both doing work to subsidise your studies. You're not doing work, leaving school and trying to find a job at the bottom of the ladder.
I actually didn't go to university personally, but, as an example of work ethic, I left home at 19. I moved out to Gibraltar to work as a runner for financial trading companies out there. I was fortunate enough to then land a job in Dubai as an oil broker. And now I'm back in London working as a compliance officer. But, there is work ethic there. But I think Olivia touched on a really good point of, like, as I said, I can't speak for everyone, but personally, I went to grammar school near where I live here, and I wanted to be a musician all through school, for example. And I do feel there's very much an attitude of British elitism. And I'm not sure exactly where it comes from or where it's come from over...
You mean people who think that they're too good for a certain type of job? I'm uncomfortable with people... Yeah, but this is our background, mate. We're middle class. I was about to say kids. I'm not going to get away with that at 45. We are middle class. I don't think we're allowed to criticise... Because you went off to be a runner in Gibraltar at a financial company. Mate, you were not buttering bread at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sandwiches, were you? So maybe if that was all that was on offer to you, you wouldn't have done it, pal.
True.
That's the problem, and that's what's missing. That's what's missing is this. I don't know. We've demonised so-called working classes to such a degree. We've conflated them with racism and ludicrous immigration arguments, and we've created an environment in which people don't seem to realise everyone has to start on the lowest rung they can reach. You and me were lucky that the lowest rung we could reach was higher than the bottom rung. But if the lowest rung you can reach is the bottom rung, why aren't you grabbing it? That's the question, Charlie.
I agree, James, and my point is, well, I to make sure I didn't quite get around to it, but, just from my perspective at school, for example,
yes.
I wanted to be a musician at one point, and it was very much, no, you're too intellectual for that, that's a waste of time, what do you do? It was very much like, I went to grammar school, so maybe it was worse there, but it was very much push you down an academic road, it was very much...
Yeah, again, you're very polite. I like the way you say you didn't quite get around to making your point instead of saying, because you jumped all over me and started monstering me over what I'd already said. But I am late for the travel news, and I do think the middle class experience is almost, with the greatest of respect, because it's the only experience I've got as well, Charlie. I wonder whether it's irrelevant to the bigger picture, except for the fact that your education prepared you for profession rather than allowing you to indulge your enthusiasm that may have become your profession. I don't know. But it's the kid who's not got a job, who's turning his nose up, for want of a better word, turning his nose up at the prospect of buttering barm cakes in Pret-a-Manger. Little reference there for my listeners in Manchester. It's 11:46. There you go. This is serious, stuck record time. I hope I'm wrong time. Catchphrase 2017. Jobs. Young people. We keep hearing from the usual sort of fraudsters that when we turn off immigration, people stop coming here, we'll be able to train up our own. What sort of jobs are we talking about? Research scientists, academics, doctors, professors, nurses, teachers. You just look around, see all the people currently doing jobs who hail from elsewhere in the European Union. Yeah, we'll get rid of them. We won't actually get rid of them, although the Prime Minister's not prepared to promise that we won't get rid of them, but, we'll get rid of their successors. They won't, we won't have anyone coming else post-Brexit, control our borders. And all of these people who won't turn up for a job as a night porter at a hotel in Devon because they think it's beneath them, we're going to train them up to be research scientists and doctors. Happy days. Claire's in Bexley Heath. Claire, what's going on?
Hello.
Hello, Claire.
Part of the problem comes from the current education system. I've got a 16-year-old, and understandably, the schools want every child to aim for a career that not every child is going to have a career. A lot are just going to have a job. And I think...
were you listening yesterday?
No, I was at work yesterday.
I got on my high horse yesterday with 2 callers, much older than your son. One said I'm only a courier, and one said I'm only a decorator. And I know what you mean when you say they're not going to have a career, they're just going to have a job. But I'm uncomfortable with that phraseology.
I agree. But with the schools, they're pushing them, obviously, a lot more to go to university, which not every child will go to university.
Got ya. So we don't want to say only a job or only a courier or only a decorator, but the schools don't recognise the necessity and indeed suitability of jobs that don't involve degrees and don't involve training and don't necessarily involve...
That's right.
Yeah.
I think it's gone too far the other way.
Yeah.
And I think it's unrealistic for a lot of kids to aim... I know it sounds awful. They shouldn't be aiming that high, and I don't mean it in that way. I just mean that it's unrealistic for a lot of children. A lot of kids can't afford to go to university. Their parents can't afford them to go to university. You know, for some, it makes no sense at all to come out with that much debt.
Yeah. With a degree that won't make you any more employable at all. So tell me a bit, if you want. You don't have to. Tell me about your boy. Are you using him as your example in this?
It's my daughter.
Your daughter. I apologise.
Yeah, I mean, she's 16. She's doing her GCSEs. But, you know, we've been nagging her for months now to get a Saturday job.
Yeah.
She's got her national insurance number. She doesn't want to do it.
Why not?
You know, she's quite... Because a lot of them are standing up all day. Oh, I like a laying at the weekends. You know, and I understand at the moment it is all pushed for the GCSEs. And that has to be the priority at the moment. I understand that. But at the same time, I had a Saturday job at 14. And my husband did. You know, I don't think it instills a good work ethic just to have that attitude.
What do you think this is? Let's pick this.
All of our friends are the same.
Yeah. Is it our fault?
I think it is.
Rather than the education system. I think you're right about the education system. But is it because the cotton wool? Because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, because my eldest is about to start secondary school, at which point I'm going to stop talking about her on the radio because it's her life when she turns 11, and so I'm squeezing her as much as I can before September.
Sad.
Yeah, exactly that. Sad dad. I don't want to give her another cross to bear. But I've been looking at her a lot lately and wondering whether we should have given her more independence. We've done our best to give her independence, but letting her go off on her bike, letting her go to the shops on her own. We're also terrified of something bad happening, whether it's traffic or terrorism or abduction or whatever it may be. And that has created possibly just a mindset among younger people where they don't have that.
Well, I'm amazed at some of my friends' attitudes, and people that I know, that they don't let their kids stay at home on their own at age 15.
Blimey.
You know, and
but then how is that kid going to think, I'm going to go out and get myself a job?
Well, like I say to them, they can join the army at 16.
Yeah.
They can legally get married, you know, and at 15 you're not prepared to trust them to be at home for a couple of hours on their own.
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre. So what's she going to do? I mean, how long are you going to let her have Lions at the weekend and she gets her exam results in? She isn't going to suddenly wake up and be a Duracell bunny, is she?
She gets a very small, compared to a lot of her friends, a very small allowance every month. And once that money's gone, it's gone.
She's staying in.
To buy a Starbucks once a week. That's a lot of her money gone.
Yeah.
You know? And we're not prepared to keep topping it up, because if she wants more money, she can get a job.
And then and I don't see much of this yet because of the age of my children, but then you get the parents who are sort of trying to use their own children as validations of their own existence, so they'll give them an allowance because it's keeping up with the Joneses and announcing to the world,
exactly.
You know, I don't want my daughter washing dishes, I don't want my daughter buttering bread. Actually, I do want my daughter washing dishes and buttering bread. Maybe that's the middle class thing.
I said, you know, even Brooklyn Beckham's got a Saturday job for...
Well, yeah, hang on a minute. I think he's taking photographs for Vogue or something, isn't he? That's the problem. They think, Claire, you've just done it. You've fallen into the trap. That's what they think they can do. They think they can get a Saturday job. Well, Brooklyn Beckham's got a Saturday job.
Generation.
Yeah.
Everything goes on Instagram, you know. That's not very glamorous, is it?
Well, we've got to find a way to make it glamorous. You can tell her she can have a latte in Starbucks. She can buy it using her staff discount. There you go.
If only.
That'll be if only. Don't phone me back in a year. Mohammed's embarking. Mohammed, what's going on?
Yeah, how you doing, James?
I'm good, mate. What's on your mind?
Right. I was listening to some of your callers earlier on, and, you know, you mentioned the word middle class. I come from, you know, a council estate, so, like, the lower class background, right?
Yeah.
And obviously a boy, and then, you know, you grow up in, like, on a council estate, and, you know, it's all about community. So, like, working at something like McDonald's or like something like that, it's a bit of like a peer pressure as well, because you know, when I was 16, 15, my parents and my grandparents were telling me to go get a job, right? But I just didn't want to, because I didn't want to look, you know, uncool.
So if you got a job in McDonald's as a 16-year-old in Leicester, your mates would tease you?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Your mates who didn't have any job at all?
You know, look, let me be honest, I'm 24 now, and, you know, at that time, we was getting in trouble with the police,
sure,
things like that. So at that time, you can understand what I'm saying, we had other means of making money, so we'd understand that. And it's only when things took a sharp turn, where a few things happened in my life at 18, I had to sit down and actually realise that, look, the path that I'm going, I'm worth much more than that. And I moved down to London, and I moved to a very rubbish university, but that was like, you know, that was just a means to just, that was like a leaping point. And I came in, and then I'll tell you what, I worked jobs that I never thought I'd ever work, never ever. And I'd travel, I'd work through agencies, any jobs that you can think of, name it, I've done it. I'd travel 2 hours to go there and work, because the thing was,
sea lion trainer.
No, that was.
You said any job, name it.
All right, that's the only one I missed out on, but I'll get that next time. I'll get that next time.
You're a star. What's the difference between you and your mates back in Leicester?
You know, I just saw the vision. You know, I had potential. I was, you know, I was a high achieving student. I was going to college, but it was like I had like two groups. So like in school, I could work hard, but I'd be the class clown. I'd do my work and I'd distract everyone. So I had that ability, and I could always talk.
And briefly, because I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
What are the guys? If you'd got a job in McDonald's when you were 16, the mates who would have teased you about it, what are they doing now?
Some of them are in jail. Some of them are still working now, and I'm a sales manager in central London, turning over about $250,000 in sales every year.
Bless you, mate. Bless you.
You're just trying hard. And
you stay hanging there. No, that's it now. You've won. You've won this hour. Seriously. So it's there. It's the get up and go that we seem to have killed in our own children. In our own children, you heard Claire, her own daughter. We're not speculating theoretically about other people's kids, which is always madness, although it can be politically useful. Oh boy. I want to talk again, because it's coming before the House of Commons today, about the EU nationals, non-British EU nationals, who in some cases have lived here for more than half of their lives, all of their lives in a few cases, but whose futures are still in jeopardy. And I just want to know what impact that's having on the rest of the country. It's partly because of a caller we took on Friday from a woman who has 3 hotels in Devon and Somerset, and described, it was actually a conversation about the Common Affairs Select Committee, where the fellow who ran Wetherspoons suggested, having campaigned passionately to leave the European Union, he suggested we should try and think of a way in which people who live in the European Union should be able to come and work here more easily than people who don't. Tim Martin, I think, is his name. You did hear me correctly. Campaigned passionately to leave the European Union, and then sat in the House of Commons last week and said we need to think of a way in which people who live in the European Union can come and work here more easily than people who live miles away, like in China and in India. Of course, it could have been pointed out to him that there was a way to do that. But there you go. And then the Director of Human Resources at Pret a Manger came in and said that of 50 applicants for a job in one of her sandwich shops, only one would be British, and we started exploring that. It was very interesting, actually. It's a remarkable show on Friday. I just need to apologise, actually, to Andy, who I described as a Gulf War veteran. Of course, he told us about his time serving in Afghanistan, not in Iraq. It was Afghanistan that he described as a war that will never be in the history textbook. Sorry, Andy, I almost proved your point for you unintentionally. I won't make that mistake again, my friend. But the call from the hotelier described an utter inability to fill vacancies that are now opening up because people have gone home. And it just, you know, I've been pretty clear that I'm persuaded increasingly that we're doing something really silly, really, really silly. And catchphrase 2017, my God, I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, absolutely love to be wrong. But the reason why you can't stop worrying or can't stop pointing out the problems, this weekend's emblematic moment of Brexit was probably Liam Fox sitting in front of a massive tweet on a screen on the telly while saying he never sent it out, while sitting in front of it saying he never sent it out. That's where we are. That seems to sum up Brexit for me at the moment. One of the key Brexit ministers sitting in front of a screen grab of a tweet from his own account saying, oh, I never sent that tweet out. I don't know what you're talking about. Quite incredible where we find ourselves now. And the reason why, again, hashtag hope I'm wrong, we have to keep doing this is because if it does turn out to have been a con, if it does turn out to have been a lie built upon sort of nativist and xenophobic rabble-rousing and slightly weird quasi-intellectual arguments built on false premises regarding sovereignty and democracy and laws, then what are they going to go for next? And my fears are, in no particular order, they'll go for the NHS, they'll go for the welfare state, and they'll go for the BBC. Because what I have to do now is acknowledge that I've shared with you my reservations about leaving the European Union. I can't do that when I'm working at the BBC. When I turn up at the BBC, I have to leave every single opinion I have at the door. I know everyone's convinced that they're biased, absolutely everybody, Corbynistas, UKIPers, and everybody in between. But that's kind of the point. When I work there, I cannot have an opinion. And that's really important. That's really, really important if you care about the truth. If you don't care about the truth, then you probably welcome a world in which you can rely on Donald Trump's Twitter account to tell you what is real in the world and what isn't. But this is the point. If it turns out that lies have been told and the liars win, you've got to call out the lies, even if it hurts, even if you wish you didn't have to, even if you wish you could just turn the page and move on and do something else. You can't stop, and I won't stop. I won't stop. Because today it's about empathy again. It's about empathy again, this desperately unfashionable feeling that comes naturally to some people and never ever appears in the moral consciousness of others. Imagine, well, let's start here, okay? What do you base your sense of security on right now? What is it that you look down the rail track of life, what makes you feel secure, okay? I have a contract of employment here at LBC. It's a little bit longer than I wanted to sign, but there were negotiations and deals and various, promises and pledges, and so I signed up for longer than I was going to do. And that makes me feel secure. It means that if they come to their senses and hand me my sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap, then contractually I'll be able to pay my bills and feed my children and pay my mortgage until the end of that contracted period. It makes me feel secure. I'm made to feel much more secure by the fact that I have a home and I have a wife whom I love and whom I believe loves me, and together we're twice as strong as we would be on our own, and we will be able to stay together for as long as we want to. Nothing will come between us. I am made to feel secure by the world in which I live, the peace that we've enjoyed for decades, and the knowledge that it's almost impossible that my country will change enough for me to no longer feel welcome here. Let me now swap the word country for home. I can't imagine it, even in these days of revalidating and revivifying some ancient hatreds and racism and xenophobia, never been more popular. I can't quite imagine anti-Irish sentiments returning to 1960s, 1970s levels. You never know, never say never. But I would argue my security is based on all of those presumptions. And this weekend, when I was thinking about that hotelier in Somerset, talking about people who were happy here but have now left post-referendum result, I realised that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about security. Why would you stay here if you have no certainty? So if Article 50 gets triggered this week, do you want my big prediction on that, by the way? I may keep it for a while. As it probably will get triggered this week. There's a 2-year process of negotiation, potentially. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'll explain that another time. There's the negotiation period. I think we're going to walk away quite early as soon as it becomes clear that we can't get anything meaningful out of them, and then they'll just desperately hope that Paul Dacre delivers, and they manage to convince the British public that it's all the fault of the European Union that we're not getting a good divorce deal, rather than the people that demanded the divorce. But there you go. That's conversation for a different day. I don't know how I would feel if I could guarantee neither my home life nor my professional life for more than, however long it takes for Article 50 to be triggered and the negotiations to be concluded. One of the 3 Brexit ministers, I forget which, said yesterday, I mean, all 3 floated the boat of us walking away with no deal. They just had slightly differing views on how bad that would be. Boris Johnson said it wouldn't be apocalyptic. That's now plus in Brexit Britain. That's now a positive. That's a compliment. So if someone comes up to you later today and says, how did I do in that presentation earlier, and they say, well, it wasn't apocalyptically bad. That's a compliment. That's a good thing, right? That's where we are now. That's Brexit Britain. One of them said, we may not be able to guarantee the rights of EU citizens until the end of negotiations, which haven't even started yet, and which I think have to take 2 years. I don't know what that would feel like. So I don't want to have a Brexit argument. I want you to give me a buzz after the news and just tell me what it feels like. What does the uncertainty feel like? 0345 6060 973. And please, if you're listening to this and thinking, it's fine, James, I can live with it, give me a ring as well. I don't just want to hear from the people for whom it is feeling a little bit apocalyptic. Give me a ring and tell me why you're not worried. 0345 6060 973. I apologise to everyone waiting to talk about the other subject. Phone lines are wide open now. If you hit the numbers, you will get through. But I'm reading a lot about doctors and nurses leaving. The front page of the Times today, Oxford College is warning academics, they're already leaving. Why? And how does it feel to be uncertain? Beauty of radio. You didn't see that, did you? I've bought a new phone cover. It's exactly the same colour as the desk in the studio. So I just spent the entire news bulletin looking for it while it was literally under my nose. EU workers must stay, Oxford heads tell May. Accidental rhyme on the front of the Times. Today, the heads of 35 Oxford colleges are pleading with MPs to allow European Union citizens the right to stay. They claim, and this is the interesting thing, that an exodus of academics has already begun. Anecdotal evidence has emerged that EU employees of the university have been prompted to return to the continent because of uncertainty surrounding their future immigration status. That's all but 3, I think, of the Oxford colleges who have taken this extraordinary step of writing to the Times. And the NHS, it's also reported today, could lose 25,000 nurses and doctors. That's 2/5 of the EU citizens currently working in the NHS who are, according to research by Channel 4's Dispatches programme, it's a poll. They just simply asked them a question, are you thinking of leaving? 2/5 said yes. So, look, in the interest of clarity, there's no way they all would. They're thinking about it. It comes as medical leaders also write to the Home Secretary to request an exemption for health and social care from a new £1,000 per year charge for employing a non-EU citizen. It's all, well, it all feels like we're circling a plug hole. But in the interest of balance, which is important, if you don't feel any risk, threat, danger, as an EU national with no clarity yet about what your status is going to be or when it will be clarified, I need you to call me. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. What do you feel? Just because, look, what we're learning post-Trump, post-Brexit is that some people just don't care. They don't care how you feel. Some people, I even heard someone suggesting that Donald Trump's contemplation of sending in the National Guard to round up illegal immigrants, that'd be fine. So you now have people who you live and work alongside, who you are discovering perfectly comfortable with the idea of soldiers kicking down a door and dragging a screaming child out into the street prior to them being put in some sort of internment centre. We've got that. That's out there. We know that exists. Most people do care about others, and most of us can probably be encouraged to care a little bit more. So no story you tell me today is going to change the mind of someone who's comfortable with the door being kicked in. Someone who is absolutely and increasingly confident to come out and say, yep, absolutely believe that you shouldn't have any rights at all, or whatever rights you do have should be based on where you were born or what colour your skin is, as a Republican congressman came out and said that over the course of the weekend. But I'm interested in everybody else, everybody who is possessed of some form of conscience, some form of moral compass, even if it's pointing in the wrong direction at the moment. It's hardly surprising when you look at the effort that's been put in to getting it to point in the wrong direction. Great piece in the Washington Post by Anne Applebaum, I've tweeted earlier if you follow me, about how Sweden has become the holy grail of fake news. Absolutely astonishing. The timeline she discusses and the desperation that you get among the Islamophobes and the racists in this country to believe that things are 100 times worse than they really are. Desperate to believe it. This appetite for a terror attack, which is quite bizarre. Somebody gets hurt on the other side of Europe and you can almost feel the prayers being offered up that it turns out to be a Muslim that's done it. That's where we are, okay? So park all of that. I'm interested in people who have a compass with a needle that can move. And those are the stories we need to hear. How scared are you for your own future, or concerned or worried? And I stress again, you are welcome to ring me and say not concerned at all. Darren is in Carlisle. Darren, what have you got?
Hi, James.
Hello, Darren.
Yeah, my partner's Spanish. She moved across here about 3 years ago to come and live with me. She's now working in the doctor's surgery, and she's very, very worried that she's going to basically get deported, taken back, because obviously she doesn't earn a lot.
Yes.
But it's crazy. It's kind of crazy kind of situation to be in.
Can you reassure? Do you feel equipped to reassure her? Because I'm not sure I do.
I try to reassure her, but you know, what's the government going to do? There needs to be some kind of amnesty for people that have moved over. You know what I mean? I'm talking like in the last couple of years to stop, you know, to stop a mad rush of people wanting to come in.
I don't think. I have to tell you, regardless of what the Daily Express might be reporting, I don't think there's going to be any mad rush of people wanting to come in because of this from Minko, who's Bulgarian. I'm getting a lot of this now. I am Bulgarian, and Brexiters make me want to go now as fast as possible from the country that I had begun to think was my dream.
Yeah, she does. To be fair, she does get a little bit of animosity with people. There is people that where she works
as a Spaniard, a Spanish healthcare worker.
A Spanish healthcare worker. It's crazy. You know, I try and reassure her, but that's the kind of it's changed. The whole Brexit thing's changed the whole kind of society kind of scenario. It's like them and us kind of scenario, and that's how it's got. I think that's how it's going to be.
And are you? I mean, you love the girl. She's crossed continents to be with you. How's your Spanish?
Yeah. Not very good. Still training.
Solo and Poco.
Yeah, it takes a long.
But what I mean, seriously though, what? Because this is your future as well, not just hers. I mean,
yeah. I honestly don't know. To be fair, she goes on a lot of sites. You know, she goes on a lot of Facebook. There's a couple of Facebook sites out there that, you know, are dealing with this, and a lot of, you know, European, especially Spanish, and the discussions they're having about actually there's other obviously like working like veterinarians and things like that. I didn't know most of the top veterinarians are Spanish. You know that. You know.
Are you serious?
No, seriously.
My vet's Spanish.
Yeah.
And she's got children at our primary school as well, but I thought that was a coincidence.
No, but if you're dealing with food, you know, like food management and meat and obviously veterinarians in that side. I can't remember what site it is, but go and look it up. It's you know, most of the veterinarians, you know, it's a very, very small minority that are actually British, and it's more European actual veterinarians in the country that deal with our food.
I didn't know that.
If they go back, who's going to be looking after the quality of the food? You know, kind of scenario. You know, is America going to, obviously, if we're going to go in cahoots with America, are they going to be sending their products?
See, do you know, this is chief nurse at NHS University Hospital in Leicester. 440 nurses from European countries. After the Brexit vote, 28 left within about 6 weeks of the result coming in.
The NHS is just going to collapse. I can honestly say that's probably what's going to happen.
What would the government? What could the government do to address? Because if they come out and say, "Well, everyone's fine," then the political argument, which doesn't really butter any parsnips with me, the political argument is that they'll somehow be sacrificing the futures of the British expats living elsewhere in the European Union.
I think it's a small thing just to say, look, whoever's here now has a right to stay, kind of scenario. The expats, they've moved across there. It's up to the individual countries to say yes, they can stay. Yeah.
And I just can't see them being petty. But I can understand. I understand the argument. The only argument I'm not prepared to countenance is the one. But hey, this is how topsy-turvy everything has become. The people who voted to leave, claiming that Ramonas, so funny, Ramonas don't care about the British expats overseas in other countries. When in fact one of the many, many, many reasons to vote to remain was to protect their futures, their livelihoods, and to give them the sort of security in Germany and France and Spain, Darren, that your partner now, very much to her shock, I imagine, she just doesn't have it in Britain, does she? She doesn't know what's down there. It might not be bad, it might all be great, #hope I'm wrong, but she doesn't know, and that's scary.
Yeah, the other thing I like to bring up, as I say, when she moved over here, because I've got quite a good wage, I'm a train driver.
Yeah.
And when
are you on strike?
No, I'm not. I'm not on that.
Just a day off.
No, take a day off. We had to go all the way to Preston. This is from Carlisle to Preston to actually go to the job centre, whatever, get registered. she couldn't claim any benefit, which is fair enough because I'm supporting her. That's the whole point. You support to sell now with her way.
Yes.
But it was kind of crazy, and everybody's got, oh well, they're coming to get benefit. No, not really. If
I know.
The problem. What's the problem?
Yeah.
I'm as I say, I'm worried. Obviously, if she lost the job, I can't see that happening because she's quite happy at it. But people that've been here for over 20 years and told that they're not allowed to stay, I think it's just crazy.
I don't know that they will be. I really don't. Hashtag hope I'm right. But it's the uncertainty. That's the human condition that we're trying to describe this hour. It's not the political argument or the academic debate or the speculation or the absence of. It's the human condition. The more certainty you have in your life, the easier your life is. It's oddly, and if you told me 10 minutes ago I was going to bring them into this conversation, it's partly why the McCann story remains so resonant and so potentially controversial. I can't imagine anything worse than not knowing. When we've spoken to the parents of people whose relatives went missing decades ago, they'd rather know they were dead than carry on not knowing. It's certainty. Certainty is that... Certainties, plural, are the building blocks with which you build your idea of what your future will be. And the fewer certainties you have, the fewer building blocks you have to create in your own mind an idea of what your future will be. And I think that must be horrible. Although I stress again, ring me if you're cool with it and tell me why, for heaven's sake, because whatever you've got, if we can bottle it, we can help people like Darren and his partner. 11:45 is the time. Breaking news from Scotland, where First Minister Nicola Sturgeon... Well, don't let me spoil the surprise. Theo Usherwood is live on the line, LBC's political editor. Go on, give us the scoop.
Yes, Nicola Sturgeon has just pressed the go button on a second Scottish independence referendum. She will say that from next week, the Scottish Parliament in Holyrood will legislate to demand a Section 30 notice from Westminster, which is, of course, the process by which a second referendum can take place. And then that would happen, she says, by as early as the autumn of next year, once it becomes clear that what the Brexit deal looks like. It was an impassioned speech from the Scottish First Minister. She tried to appear moderate. She said that Scotland had acted in good faith by trying to set out an agreement where either Britain remained within the single market, or if it didn't, then there would be a special arrangement for Scotland to allow Scotland to remain within the single market. But she was met by a point-blank refusal from the Westminster government to accept a differential approach, as she described it. And she told the audience at Bute House that she cannot pretend a compromise is remotely likely. Therefore, she said that they were taking the steps to trigger that second independence referendum.
The shape of the Brexit deal will become clear in the autumn of next year, ahead of ratification votes by other EU countries. That is therefore the earliest point at which a referendum would be appropriate. However, it is just as important that we do not leave it too late to choose a different path in a timely way. If the UK leaves the EU without Scotland indicating beforehand, or at least within a short time after it, that we want a different relationship with Europe, we could face a lengthy period outside not just the EU but also the single market, and that would make the task of negotiating a different future much more difficult. These considerations lead me to the conclusion that if Scotland is to have a real choice, when the terms of Brexit are known, but before it is too late to choose our own course, then that choice must be offered between the autumn of next year, 2018, and the spring of 2019. The third important aspect of planning ahead is this. I have already said that by the time a choice...
Is what? That's an interesting point to put the cut in. Theo, is there anything to stop Theresa May from telling Ms Sturgeon to just jog on?
Well, it's an interesting point. Nothing more than, I suppose, you could say her credibility. And by that, but
she can't. She can't let this happen, because if Scotland voted for independence, Theresa May would have to resign.
it's straightforward from Theresa May's point. From the way it's seen in Westminster, it's easy before the deal becomes clear for Theresa May to say, no, you can't have your second independence referendum. That is accepted even here in Westminster, that would be too early. But what Nicola Sturgeon's done there, which is quite clever, is she's banking on the fact that, as she would say, there's been a refusal up to now to secure Scotland's special privileges or even to remain within the single market. There's nothing to say that would change. Therefore, they made it clear in their manifesto going into the elections in Scotland last May that they would have a second referendum if Britain left the single market. Therefore, they have, and she called it a mandate to do so, the largest ever mandate to do so. So once that deal with the European Union becomes clear, then it would be very, very difficult for Theresa May.
Or the absence of a deal becomes clear.
Or the absence of a deal. And of course, the card that Nicola Sturgeon has played that's quite clever is it isn't in Theresa May's gift to give Scotland a better deal or a different deal. It's in the gift, of course, of the European negotiators, the likes of Michel Barnier or Guy Verhofstadt, the Brexit negotiator for the European Parliament. They're the ones who decide whether Scotland can have a separate deal, of course. It's not down to Theresa May. And in terms of her priorities are tougher controls on immigration, not ensuring that Scotland has access to the single market.
And if there are interesting developments further down the line, the problem with that border in Northern Ireland is going to look like small beer compared to the notion of Scotland still having freedom of movement with the rest of Europe and England and Wales not. I mean, a lot of people miss the point that the Scottish National Party's very raison d'etre is independence. So to suggest that there's something insincere or opportunistic about calling for a second referendum is to miss the point of the Scottish National Party completely.
Yes, James, but ever since that first independence referendum, and when David Cameron then, the idea was that there was going to be a special deal for Scotland, more Devo Max in effect, and Gordon Brown and David Cameron, Nick Clegg rushed up there along with Ed Miliband, of course, to say that there was going to be this special deal. Then, of course, David Cameron appeared to renege on that deal by talking about English votes for English laws. And now Theresa May, the Prime Minister, has completely backtracked on that, even hinting that further powers could be brought back from Holyrood down to Westminster. That fox has been long shot, Scottish nationals would say.
You are Boris Johnson. I conclude now. I like these longer chats, Theo. We should do it more often. But one more question. Did Theresa May call Nicola Sturgeon's bluff here? And Nicola Sturgeon has actually not bluffed?
I think, I was just going to say it's the other way around. I think Nicola Sturgeon has called Theresa May's bluff because, of course...
So you're quite right. Theresa May invited Nicola Sturgeon to call her bluff. This is what happens when I try and pass off a clever tweet as my own thoughts.
But the point was that, and this was put to me by a very... senior Lib Dem, Alistair Carmichael, even former Scottish Secretary, when I caught up with him in a by-election a couple of months ago, and he told me that Nicola Sturgeon wouldn't go for a second independence referendum because the Scottish people wouldn't vote for double uncertainty. So we live in the European Union, that's one round of uncertainty. Then Scottish independence, one can argue fairly that the reason the SNP lost that vote in 2014 was because it meant more uncertainty. But of course, that no longer exists because the argument we'll hear now, I'm sure, in the coming months and weeks and months from Nicola Sturgeon and from the SNP is that by voting to leave Britain, to leave the Union, you're actually voting for more certainty. You're voting for more. You're voting for continued stability when you go for your supermarket shop, that your mortgage isn't going to rise.
Albeit all through the lens of the Treasury and the current deficit between what is raised from taxpayers in Scotland and what is spent on people in Scotland. But I understand your point. It's just every day something else pops up.
Yes, but my point, just to go back on that, is that Project Fear, the one that was successful for David Cameron, one can fairly see that being implemented by the Scottish nationalists up north of the border and saying, well, actually, if we leave the European Union, it's going to mean you're going to lose your job. It's going to mean you're going to be paying more for your weekly shop. And that role reversal is in effect what could lead, and many fear, could lead to the SNP winning this referendum. The other thing to say is that at the moment, on a poll, it's neck and neck. When the SNP lost that first referendum, they were coming from 20 points down.
Yes. So the movement of traffic is towards independence, and then the the lens of the Brexit vote probably can only really accelerate that process. Perhaps. Theo, thank you. It's coming up to 12 noon, so I'm going to knock it on the head there. And briefly, talking about jobs and futures, I didn't know whether Darren in Carlisle was right when he talked about the vets. Do you remember Darren talking? His Spanish partner works in a GP's, and he couldn't believe how many Spanish vets there were working in Britain. Well, the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons and the British Veterinary Association have indeed sent a joint letter to the Prime Minister with their concerns. This was back in October. Funny how this stuff doesn't get reported, isn't it, in all the papers that was going, vote, leave. Their concerns over how Brexit and its impact on EU migration may affect the veterinary profession, obviously negatively, and that covers everything from the people that are going to give your dog its tablets right through to the people who certify the food we eat as safe and healthy. Moving very moment between subjects, it sort of means that the programme has slightly moved away from the notion of every hour marking a punctuation mark and a change in conversation. I don't know how long it will carry on like that. One of the things that keeps me fresh and honest is the way that we can do whatever we want every day. You never know when you get up in the morning what the programme is going to hold. But I want to continue with this conversation about uncertainty, about people who have made their lives here and now don't know what their futures look like. Very unprecedented uncertainty, actually, because just like British people living in Germany and France, it never really was a matter of contemplation that things were going to get torn up and changed, but they may. So now you have 35 Oxford College heads writing to the Prime Minister, pleading for clarity and certainty on what these people's futures will hold. You've got the NHS, according to polls for Channel 4, showing that 25,000 doctors and nurses are thinking or have thought of leaving the country entirely. We know from Leicester that 28 of 440 nurses went within 6 weeks of the vote coming out. Anecdotally, anecdotes must always be taken with a fat pinch of salt. We're hearing many more cases. And then you have the vets, the two major trade bodies for British based vets. Can't even say British vets. So it's the British Veterinary Association. It's defending British interests, but British interests on this occasion involve Spanish vets. So tell me why you're not worried if you are somebody caught within this catchment area, caught between the Scylla and Charybdis, if you will, of looming Brexit and absent of certainty. 4 minutes after 12 is the time. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. James is in Hackney. James, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, I can give some insight into why all these the vets in the UK are Spanish. It's because they get very cheap training in Spain, and then they come over here and earn a fair wage, and that's been great for the UK. But like with a lot of EU migration to the northern countries, the southern countries have done really badly out of it, and have almost no young, talented people who want to be entrepreneurial and set up new businesses in Portugal, Spain, and Greece. That's not a great Europe to live in.
I don't know what question you're answering, mate.
Well, I'm answering the question that a bit of uncertainty, actually, and having people come here, work here, and then move back to these countries is not a bad thing. The idea that
I see. Sorry. So you're
Germany and the UK.
Yeah, you're a Leave voter who's rung me up to tell me that all the people who are worried shouldn't be worried.
No, I'm not saying they shouldn't be worried, but I'm saying from a British perspective, in terms of being a
It'd be good to have fewer vets.
No, we're not going to have fewer vets because they will qualify.
When?
You can spin it whichever way.
Well, I'm not spinning anything.
Within the 2-year period, well, the thing is, James...
How many vets are going to qualify within the 2-year period?
How many vets are going to be kicked out within the 2-year period?
Well, you're talking about kicking them out now, mate. You're supposed to be telling people not to worry.
I'm saying not to worry because you're the one who's saying that they're all going to get kicked out.
No, I'm categorically not. I'm asking people how they feel, and they're telling me, and then they're reporting evidence-based observations about their futures. And you're perfectly entitled to tell them not to worry, but you're not really entitled to say if we do end up losing an awful lot of vets, we'll somehow be able to replace them with people we've trained ourselves. Where are all those people who want to be vets but can't be at the moment?
Then they are not going to come through. You're right. You're absolutely right. And that is why categorically there is no way that we can stop that. There's no way that the Tories
just words.
Can say that, I'm afraid that's what politics is. That's what arguments are. They're words.
No, but they have to make sense.
That's how it works. Well, it does make sense.
They categorically that isn't going to happen, and they have to stop it. Let's start again, James. Let's start again. How can you offer... Well, actually, you can't, can you? Because you're just dealing with a guilty conscience now.
I'm not guilty, but I'm concerned. Don't get me wrong. When I put my tick on that ballot paper, I was concerned, and that's a good thing because, like you were saying earlier,
25,000 doctors and nurses thinking of leaving. Just sell that to me then as a good thing.
Thinking. There you go.
Yeah.
You know,
they weren't before.
Dance around once they've left. It's not going to happen. People don't leave secure work.
It's not secure. That's the whole point. I don't know what program you've been listening to. It's not secure.
I don't see why Spanish vets are going back to Spain where there are no veterinary jobs, because Spain has been totally stripped.
But you rang up to tell me that it was a good thing. Growth. You rang up to tell me it was a good thing they'd be going back.
I'm not saying it's a good thing they'd be going back. I'm saying that we need a turnover.
But now you're saying they're not.
People to come for 2 years to learn.
You rang up. You began by saying that they would go back, and it was good because we could train up our own to replace them. And within the space of 3.5 minutes of, to be honest with you, mate, really kindergarten level questioning, you've now started saying the precise opposite. And you're supposed to be the one offering comfort.
No, they're not going back. They're not going back straight away. But certainly.
But they are going back eventually, are they?
Yeah, they will go back eventually.
Oh, okay. Why would they go back to a place with no growth and no jobs, you asked a minute ago?
Because the points-based system will force a certain number of people to make that decision.
So we're going to impose the points-based system on people who already live here?
A points-based system on people who already live here? I don't think so.
But you just said that the points-based system was the reason why they'd have to leave. How can they leave if they're not already here?
Sorry, James. The points-based system is the reason why people will not continue to join at the rate that they have.
Oh, so they aren't going to. No one's going to leave then.
People will leave. People will turn over.
Okay,
part of this.
Mate, I think just in the interest of charity, I'm going to have to put you out of your misery now. But thank you. Dee is in Barnet. Dee, what would you like to say?
I nearly didn't call in because it didn't think it concerned me as such until you mentioned the word safety, and that's been my biggest issue lately. I'm a British citizen now. I wasn't originally. I've been living here now 20 odd years. But for me, it's that sense of safety that things aren't as they used to be when I first arrived here.
How do you mean? Because you know there is evidence of increased reporting of hate crimes. I believe that the actual incidents have gone off the scale, but there is also an argument that increased reporting has contributed to the statistics. Tell me about the stuff that's actually happened that makes you feel more fearful than you did before.
Incidents such as after the Brexit, when a few of my friends and myself were talking about our disappointments in the results, and some of the colleagues there were talking about their delight at the results, and obviously I might have voiced possibly much too stronger points for Brexit. Against sort of.
But a lot of people who voted for Brexit.
I was told to go back
okay.
where I had come from if I didn't like it here. Even though my children are British, my husband's British originally, and I've been living here 20 odd years, and I feel British, and I have British passport. I have got another passport, albeit, but for me it's the sense of security, because I have always considered Britain to be safe. I come from Croatia. We have spoken in the past. Yes. I did call in about Trump and the whole sort of situation, and that's obviously, sort of concern as well, and has contributed to my sense of unsafety. But I have said to my husband recently, I just don't feel safe anymore. We are talking about possibly moving out of London, and I said to him, I firstly want to have a look statistically the area we would consider moving to, how the people voted there. I have a private number plate, yes, I know, lucky or guilty, whatever, that spells my name, which is a foreign spelling, and I've been saying to him I want that removed. I want just a normal number plate.
What can I say? What can I say to make you less worried? I mean, what do you need to say? Because I can't quite imagine a colleague or someone that you've known for years telling you to get out. Then, because am I right in thinking that you think you're home now? You think you're at home?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know more about the English football team than I know about Croatian.
Yeah.
If you want to put it, the culture, everything, I have fully assimilated here, and I feel fully British. My children most definitely are.
And so you're describing the shock of discovering that your neighbours, metaphorically speaking, don't think this is your home. You're not at home, even though you've been living and working alongside them for years.
Yeah, and also, the sad thing is my brother-in-law who's working over here, he has come over here to work on a very specialist visa because he has specialist skills. And my sister was considering moving over here, so that would have been really nice for, to have someone of my own, so to speak. But that's now fallen through because they just don't feel they would be welcome here or feel safe here. So they're now considering moving to Germany instead. And that's a shame because he has got some specialist skills which not many people are trained for in this country in engineering. So he would have been a valuable contributor to this country in terms of work skills and workforce, but he's most probably going to decide now not to do that.
And I didn't understand your original point about certainty and security, but yet the reason why you didn't ring in is because I'm talking about how uncertain you feel about your future. You don't. You're married. Your residency here is safe. But it's the other stuff.
It's the safety. It's the psychological sense of safety, and that's what I'm talking about. And that's why when you said that word, safety.
Okay, and when I say to you, don't worry, don't worry, it's just being over-reported. Don't worry, these things always go on. Don't worry. You say, well, it's never happened to me before, and my arguments collapse.
Yeah. I mean, 20 years ago, if you had asked me, I would have always said freely to anyone, from Croatia, I would have told them about my war experience. I'd never, ever felt that was something I needed to hide. But there is a sense now, and probably completely wrong, probably completely subjective.
Yes.
But yeah, that one incident sort of, and then when I do hear of other incidents, even sort of recently, my husband and I went down to Southend to, our dog died recently, and so we were just a bit sad, and we just sort of kind of thought, we'll just go and cheer ourselves up and had lovely lunch, and came across another dog owner who I guess was from Eastern Europe by her accent, and I could see on her face, and again, maybe completely reading it wrong, when I said to her, where are you from? And she kind of paused and hesitated, and then when it was Slovakia, and I said, oh, don't worry, it's all right, I'm from Croatia, and then she kind of livened up and then started talking to me. And then, again, completely probably subjective and probably not based on any facts, but...
You're doing what I do. You're doing what I do every day. You're hoping that you're wrong.
Yeah, that word, that phrase that you keep saying all the time, because I listen to your show, I really do hope to God that we are wrong.
Yeah, me too. Really, but I'm going to stop saying hashtag because it trivialises it and it annoys people. Dee, you take care. Briefly, just on that question of vets, there's a brilliant book by Ian Dunt. It's got the word Brexit in the title. I'll remember what the title is imminently. You remember I had to review all the Brexit books for the TLS, and Ian's unfortunately was the one that kind of got left out because it addressed a different issue from the kind of post-mortem. And on the question of vets, industry estimates suggest that 95% of vets in meat hygiene graduated elsewhere in the EU. 95%. British vets simply do not like the work. The problem is not only that it's more poorly paid, though it is, the trouble is that someone willing to go through the extensive requirements, training-wise, of veterinary medicine generally does not do so in order to spend their working life watching animals being killed and the washing of their carcasses by former convicts. Critics who say Britain should be training up more indigenous workers to do these roles have two difficulties. Firstly, there is a time lag. Training vets takes years, and the country won't be sure that it requires this domestic intake until the conclusion of Article 50, and by the time we know we need them, it will be too late. Secondly, it is not clear whether there are enough British people who want to go through all that training to oversee the slaughter of animals. However, if those roles are not fulfilled, the UK has significant problems. Firstly, it will not be able to export meat products to the EU because an independent veterinary presence in the abattoir is one of the standards imposed by Brussels. Oh, Project Fear. That book by the journalist Ian Dunt is called Brexit, What the Hell Happens Now? Significant number of you have already read it, actually. This is why so many of you are able to remind me of what the title was. Everything you need to know about Britain's divorce from Europe. You subtitled it, How Brexit Will Change Life from the Courts to Trade to Food. And given that our so-called media is desperately sort of trying to cloak looming problems in the ludicrous mantle of faux patriotism, these kind of books are really important. But I want to know how this lack of certainty is affecting you. David is in Dagenham. David, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Yeah, first time caller, but been a long time listener.
Welcome. I've got a terrible frog in my throat, David. So although this is your debut, you might have to take over the whole show until 1 o'clock. I'm serious.
Hello?
No, I'm deadly serious. If I collapse in a fit of coughing, you're on your own. What did you ring in to tell me?
Okay. Right, well, this is right down my street as my life is in limbo at the moment. basic history of my life, basically, is my wife is Czech.
Yeah.
We've been married 15 years. I've got a daughter of 13 who's holds a British passport, and a boy of 6 who also holds a British passport. My wife still holds a Czech passport, but it's affecting us in things like we was hoping to move house.
Yeah.
But now we can't really make the decision whether to move or not, because at the moment I live in a London borough. Now, if I have to sell up in 2 years and leave the country, I'm going to have more chance of selling my house in London than if I moved out where I wanted to, what was Suffolk. So it's very hard to plan ahead. And also things like education. With my daughter, exams are coming up. We want to go to university. We're going to go to... we was in the EU, she could go to university in Czech Republic where it's free. But now, we don't know what's going to happen. It's just being in limbo is so annoying that no one to make a decision. There's so many people in my situation. If you can understand what I mean, over the years...
It's crystal clear to me that this lack of certainty. But are you sure there isn't more certainty there than you realise? I mean, what makes you fear that you might have to leave the country in a couple of years' time?
We don't know, but it's worrying my wife more than anything.
Is it?
If you know what I mean. I'm thinking everything will be okay. They've got to come to some sort of deal, but you don't know. So it's very hard to plan your life from there. If you know what I mean. How could I go and buy a house now in Suffolk?
Yes.
Knowing that I might have trouble selling that, and we have to go. I mean, I don't fancy going to Czech Republic, but I'm not going to let what's going to happen in the future.
And that is it. I mean, even if you're wrong, even if your fears are unfounded, you now have to live your life in what you've just, I think, quite perfectly described as limbo for reasons that actually no one explained to you prior to the referendum vote.
No, it wasn't made. They should have made it a lot more clearer about what was going to happen.
But none of them knew, mate. None of them knew anything. Look at the state of the people doing the negotiating now.
It's leaving it too late. People voted on something they did not know enough about.
Did you vote to leave or remain?
I didn't vote. But if I was truthful with you, I was going to vote to leave for certain reasons. But if I knew all this, James, I would have voted to remain.
I could punch you now, Dave. You know that, don't you?
Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking. I mean, in fact, you didn't flipping vote, man, and you somehow you swallowed it to your own future. What?
Bad.
Not good. Come here, let's hug it out. Let's hug it out. I don't want to part as enemies. All right. Again, hope I'm wrong about everything. But and that's the thing that we don't get. So when you now are with people, David, who voted to leave, and you explain to them the situation you found yourself in, what sort of reaction do they have? Or your wife tells them how she feels, and they voted to put you in this position. How do they respond?
It depends who I'm talking to.
Of course.
If I'm talking to a sort of British person sort of thing, I'll keep it very quiet. I'll sort of find out sort of their views.
Yeah.
Before I mention that my wife's Czech, because I said it affects me big time there because of my children.
Yeah.
It's just,
and you could have been persuaded.
Happened in a lot. Yeah.
That sums it up.
It's just it does, really, you know what I mean? It wasn't made clear. I think if there was a vote again now, most people would vote to remain.
Well, that's what people keep telling me. But I mean, you never know, do you? The problem is that there was a fellow earlier phoning up about Spanish vets. There is such a level of delusion and ignorance that I don't know that that's even true, David. The penny's dropped for you because it's really close to home, but there'll be a lot of people listening to this who do not give a sugar about you, your wife, or your children. That's probably the point we've all missed prior to that referendum. This absolute fetishisation of callousness that's underway right across the Western world, arguably, at the moment. I don't know. I mean, I again hope you're wrong, but I'm going to get tired of saying that soon. 12:26 is the time. Craig, you're right. I was spraying something. It's for my throat. It's not my armpits, you cheeky beggar. Muriel's in Bournemouth. Muriel, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Well, ironically, I moved here when I was 12 years old, and I never wanted to move to the country. I'm from Belgium, and my mum and dad decided they needed to move here because of my mum's work.
Right.
And I just came kicking and screaming. But, 30 years on, here I am. I did go back to Belgium to work for 8 years, but I'm married to a Brit. I've got 2 kids, and I'm not concerned about being kicked out. I don't think the government has the competency or the resources to find me and to kick us out, so I'm not concerned. But what I am concerned about is basically my mum and dad. They don't sound as British as I do, and they moved here 2 years ago. So their future is uncertain, and
they moved here to be near you in the autumn of their years.
Yes, absolutely.
Fair enough.
And they sound very foreign. So I'm concerned that with with the sort of hate crime increasing, especially in Dorset, because Dorset, hate crime increased by 100%. I'm concerned for their safety. But
there are people saying that it hasn't increased, and in the interests of comfort, we should address that fact. There's lots of people say, don't worry, it's always been there and now it's just come to the surface. I'm not quite sure how that's supposed to comfort you, or it'll all go away again, or the problem is that when people end up demonstrably worse off than they were before, they're still going to need a scapegoat.
Yes. It's very much what it feels like. And at the moment, the topic of conversation, as far as I'm concerned, is completely avoided and ignored. So it very much, for me, feels like people around me don't really care what's going to happen to me and my family.
That's awful. That's a horrible place to be, especially when this is pretty much the only home you've ever known.
Yes. But to be quite honest, James, I mean, if I get thrown out, then I'll be happy to go, because that will give me the incentive to go, because I don't feel at home.
But you have a wife and children, so weirdly, I have a lot of people telling me they already feel unwelcome. They've got less invested here than you. You would need that unwelcome to be formalised before you reacted to it.
My husband and I have spoken about potentially going, because we don't see this as a great place, for our kids to grow up in.
And my switchboard is full, and it's full every single time we do this subject, and yet when I open my newspapers, I keep being told, oh, don't worry, it's all been exaggerated, no one's read. Every single line is full, every single hour that we do on this subject with people like you. Who speaks for you?
Well, I speak for myself, and actually I'm part of the 48%, and I co-run with a great bunch of people, Dorset for Europe, and we just campaign locally and try and get people, up to speed with what's happening and inform them, because a lot of people just remain apathetic and unaware of how it's going to affect them, so I try and campaign locally.
And could you just address this tweet for me personally? It is because this is actually a little bit more honest than some of the people on the other side of the argument managed to be. It is a mess, because obviously we're surrounded by people insisting that it isn't. It is a mess, but leaving the EU will be better than being in the EU eventually. The get out of my country idiots will subside. Can you explain why that doesn't butter your parsnips, or perhaps it does?
We're not all going to keel over and die if we leave the EU. We will keep thriving and surviving. I just don't like the future that is ahead of us, which is just isolate us from the rest of the world. The arrogance that comes with it. I do not want that for my children. So economically, of course, we'll be fine. But
fine being a relative term. Yeah.
Culturally, and just the way we're perceived globally, all these things are so important that, I'm not so sure about that.
Well, at least you got a radio show. You'll always be welcome to contribute to, Muriel. Many thanks indeed. 12:30 is the time. Latest polling in Scotland shows 56% of Scots don't want a referendum, regardless of how they'd vote in it. And I have to tell you, have you got that clip I've got Kezia Dugdale on Twitter, the leader of Scottish Labour, saying Scottish Labour will vote against a second indie ref next week. We believe that together we're stronger. And she invites you to sign up to that. What do you think about that, Mr. Corbyn?
Well, if a referendum is held, then it's absolutely fine. It should be held. It's not. I don't think it's the job of Westminster or the Labour Party to prevent people holding referenda. I do think we should set it in the context of the economic relationship with the rest of the UK and the question of devolution of EU powers to English regions and to Scotland and to parts of Scotland.
Hang on a minute. Well, Scottish Labour will vote against a second indie ref next week. We believe that together we're stronger. Oh, man alive. That was on Saturday, Jeremy Corbyn was speaking. On Sunday, the Mail on Sunday reported, it was in a gossip column. I used to work on a gossip column, so I can tell you that although they don't always disclose or name their sources, they're very conscious of the danger of being sued if they print something that's not true. And they described him as, instead of having a sort of robust response to the budget ready, instead he'd spent the previous day at a market in Holloway buying dates, which he brought back to the office and arranged in pretty patterns on his desk. I'm sure that's #fake news. But it'll be interesting to see whether they submit any complaints to the Mail on Sunday for that one. Back to the question of how the uncertainty makes you feel. If you are an EU citizen and you are not remotely worried about the future, I am straining to keep one phone line free for you, okay? Because so many other people are ringing in from the other side of the fence. If you're not worried, just talk us all through why you're not. 03456060973 is the number that you need. Rob's in Gravesend. Rob, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, mate.
First, I'd like to say it's an honour speaking to you.
Don't be silly.
Because I think you're. No, yeah, because I think you're number one candidate for the only rational and sane man in this country. But anyway, the thing is that what I wanted to say is I work in a workplace and we have European citizens within it. And there's one particular lad he's Hungarian. He's been in this country for a couple of years now, married. And he's reduced. We was talking to him the other week on shift, and he's making plans to leave to go to Spain. And what we do in the city, he's a really skilled. These are skilled people.
Yes,
these are people who are really intelligent. I'd even say he borders on being an intellectual.
We've got too many of them, Rob. So, bon voyage, I'll pay for the ticket myself.
Yeah, well, but the thing is that these are the people that we actually, that actually make a substantial contribution to our country. And this is what gets lost in the haze of all this, is that the kind of quality people that are actually saying up in sticks and going and basically, the economic ramifications and the impact that's going to be made by this could be incalculable. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a Remainer. I voted to remain, and your caller two callers ago, the fellow who was married to a Czech, and he didn't vote. And that just says that's the testament to our time.
Well, yeah, I don't want people digging out Dave. Because I don't want people digging him out, because as I say, actually I am losing my voice at the moment, but even if it was only metaphorical, there's a big difference between swallowing a lie and telling a lie, Rob. Yeah. And every single time people warned about everything from uncertainty for EU citizens here, right through to economic difficulties, the impossibility of staying in the single market, as a lot of them claimed we would be able to do. The volume with which those people were shouted down, Rob, the volume was so high that you could be married to a Czech woman living in Dagenham thinking, yeah, we'll be better off out, we'll be able to, make our own laws, control our borders, whatever that meaningless, fatuous phrase was. People like Dave have to be welcome when they realise the error of their ways. You can't, and you're better at this than me, I can tell. I need to find a way not to make people feel stupid or judged or racist, or just to go, look, all right, wow, I don't know quite what happened, but I backed the wrong horse. That's all.
I think it's a case of working. The tragedy, of course, is the Labour Party, which I'm a member. I'll be up front about that.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the opposition has got to find the language again to connect with the Daves of Dagenham. Because that's the struggle. I mean, you've got people in America, sort of like, for example, Michael Moore in the United States. The reason why he is so popular is because he speaks the language of ordinary Americans. And the thing is that that's what's, to a certain degree, I can't think of anybody in my own political party that really genuinely speaks the language.
But do you know they can? You're so right. Yes. But unfortunately, I've been giving this a lot of thought lately, because I think you're right and wrong at the same time. When people talk about the ordinary working people, they speak like this, they speak like that. What you're describing is impunity. So you get these populist leaders who say relatively outrageous things, but everybody knows they're going to say relatively outrageous things, so they get away with it. Look at Farage. Farage lied about an assassination attempt. He claimed that a mechanic had actually said to him the wheel nuts on his Volvo had been interfered with. When we tracked down the mechanic, he said that's absolute rollock. That is the biggest pile of horse dung that I've ever heard. He said it all in French. If Ed Miliband had done that, it would never have gone off the front pages until he'd resigned. So when you say they don't talk like ordinary people, proper politicians get held up to scrutiny on both sides of the Atlantic, but somehow people like Trump managed to swerve it. So I don't know what the answer is. Jeremy Corbyn couldn't stand up and say half of the things you want him to say because he'd get shot down in flames. He lacks the charisma to pull it off. But if you found someone with the charisma to say the same things, I don't know that it's an inability to speak like, quotes, ordinary people, as a refusal to let them from the right-wing media.
The thing is, James, is that I always sort of like I see it from the perspective that the devil always has the best tunes.
Yeah, of course he does.
And that's basically what they are. And the thing is that from a progressive point of view, we have to start to rediscover that. We have to start to rediscover the tricks and rediscover the language in order to sort of like move forward. Because the thing is that, you know, I'm so with you that I believe Brexit is an absolute disaster. I think the news today with Scotland threatening to secede sort of like multiplies that. And I think that also from even an economic point of view, that never gets said. For example, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales last year, UK has £3.6 trillion worth of liabilities. That's 191% of our GDP. 191% of our GDP we have in liabilities, in debts, deficits, borrowings. And the thing is we then go out to the EU, where we're going to be negotiating a divorce, then go and then go out of the EU, where we've walked out of 2 trading zones in living memory. I mean, our credit rating will be shot to pieces, and people persist in this belief that Brexit is going to be fine on the night. I really can't. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being just a bit of a too much of a Ramona. But
you see, even there, you know, we start policing our own language. You've just described facts and numbers. Yeah. All you've done is count, and that somehow is evidence of your treachery. You're an enemy of the people, you are.
Well, go to the Institute of Chartered.
I know, mate. I know, but counting, that's so 20th century. We don't count anymore. We make up our own numbers. Haven't you been following American politics? 2 + 2 = 17.
No, but the thing is that this is like the decline and fall of Rome. This is how Rome fell. You know, when we just sort of like say we live in this post-truth. We don't face up to our realities. We don't face up to what is actually going on. Because the thing is that people's lives are being trashed by this. I'm seeing Greg at work in tears.
Yeah.
You know, because of like you said, the uncertainty that this is bringing on people. And people, believe it or not, James, do care. I care. I care about my country, and I'm also a European citizen, because that's what it says on my passport. And no government can take away what should be mine as of right, because the thing is that we signed up to this in 1975, and the thing is that our economy doubled as a consequence of being in
sick
the
man of Europe. We were
throwing it away
before that. Well, mate, listen, I just hang in there, Rob. Look out for Greg. Let him know that there's lots of people like you around, maybe more than there are of the other lot. And I've got some bad news for you as well.
Go on.
The Incorrigible FCA's just tweeted to say if Rob's not careful, he's in serious danger of coming across as an intellectual. Have a great day. 12:46. I don't know if you've been following the situation in Holland, where the incredibly autocratic Turkish leader, Erdogan, has called the Dutch Nazis. He's already laid it at the German feet, because the Dutch are uncomfortable having nationalist politicians, part of a government, of course, that's routinely locking up journalists and opponents, marching into Holland and trying to sort of whip up support for Erdogan to do an even bigger power grab back in Turkey than he's done already. Strange times. But we've got our own problems at home. And I don't just mean my cough, which has got to get better. There's nothing worse, I know, than listening to the radio when someone's complaining about feeling poorly. But I'm just clarifying the Labour position on the second referendum. Jeremy Corbyn's position is that they don't want one, but if the Scottish Parliament wants one, then they won't sort of support efforts at Westminster to block it. So you can just about square that with what Kezia Dugdale has said. Hugh Kerr is a former Labour MEP who's kind enough to ring the programme on a regular basis. So, Hugh, I wonder what you make of all this, and you may have to talk for a little longer than you were planning while I administer myself some throat spray.
No worries, James. I'll speak as long as you want. First of all, can I say that you have a lot of listeners in Scotland as the only intelligent radio talk show in the British Isles.
Well, they're all welcome, right?
A lot of my friends are listening to you online. And I hope that you can contribute to the debate that we're going to have again in Scotland.
Yes.
And I think this is going to change the whole game, both for Scotland and actually for the rest of the UK, because I think it's going to make people in the rest of the UK, and I've got, of course, many English friends and relatives. My son, I'm about to go to Sittingbourne to run his B&B for 2 weeks next week. You know, they're going to say, good heavens, actually, if Scotland is seriously going to break away, this shall make us think again. Nicola was brilliant this morning at her press conference and made it very clear that between August of next year, 2018, and 2019, Scotland's going to have a referendum. The latest opinion poll from STV put the support at 50-50, and that's before the campaign even begins. And I think there are many people who voted no last time who are horrified at the thought of being dragged out of Europe and being dragged into some Brexit land of, you know, minimum employment opportunities. But
equally, there are people who voted to leave in Scotland. There are plenty of people who voted to leave as well. I know the overall result went the other way.
That's right. There were 1 million people, including about a third of SNP voters.
Yes.
Those SNP voters, though, faced with a bigger picture of Scotland being independent and the question of Europe, I think will vote for the Scottish independence. And I think many people who voted no last time, and I've met many of them, are horrified by what's going to happen and will change their vote. So it's going to be a very interesting time, and we need intelligent conversations and discussions on it, and I hope you're going to be prepared to be part of that.
No, I will. I'm going to confine call-ins, I think, some days to people who have a vote in a potential Scottish referendum. Just to be clear, Theresa May has to grant permission for this. She could just keep blocking it, couldn't she?
She could technically, but she's on record as saying, way back, and the Tory government's saying way back, that if the Scottish Parliament decides in favour of it, they will not block it. Jeremy Corbyn, have you heard, came to Scotland the other day and made that clear and has repeated that yesterday. And if they did block it, to be frank, the results in Scotland would be an enormous backlash from the Scottish people who are saying, actually, here they are, even preventing us having a vote on our future, and that would produce an enormous backlash. I think the Tories would be very silly if they tried to do that. But who can tell, James? There are some silly people around.
There are some silly people around. I hope none of them turn up in Sittingbourne for a fortnight's holiday. you take care. We'll talk soon, and thank you for the kind words. I will endeavour to find a way to discuss the Scottish issue in a way that doesn't. I mean, it shouldn't alienate anybody because it's our union. But you know, as Rob pointed out, so much love coming in for Rob, who was. Mate, you were on fire, actually, if you'd allow me to say so. People are very kind about me quite often. So allow me to say that you were an absolute legend, Rob, when you rang in just before the 1:45. I guess we needed to hear more voices like that. But better late than never. Edward is in Kilburn. Edward, what would you like to say?
Hi, yeah.
Hello.
Well, there's just so much to say on the matter, isn't there? I mean, I'm basically Spanish. Both parents are Spanish. I was born in London. So that makes me a Brit. I don't feel like I'm British anyway.
Since when?
My wife... Sorry?
Since when?
Since when? I've never felt British.
Okay.
I've always felt Spanish.
Good.
But anyway,
so it's not a recent thing that's happened. I'm glad to hear that. That's fine. Carry on.
Officially, I'm British. Well, I've got dual nationality anyway. My wife's not. She's a foreigner as well. She's British now, thanks to me, but she's a foreigner as well. My mum has been here since 1964, 57 years,
yes.
53 years. So she came in when she was 18. She's retired. She's 21, so retirement age. They won't let her retire because she's a foster carer and childminder, and the local government will not let her retire. But
no, she can if she wants, but they don't want her to, and
they won't let her.
They can't hold a gun to her head.
No, but she doesn't like saying no, so she'll always help out.
Yes, I understand.
Lack of foster carers, as you probably know.
Absolutely.
So I'm just. I'm not worried.
Good. Well, hang on a minute. You wouldn't be worried. You've got a British passport.
No, I mean, I'm not worried for anyone. All it takes is them to take someone, all it takes is for them to, for example...
No, but I'm not worried about me. I've got a British passport as well. I'm worried about all the people who are worried.
Well, I think it needs them to try and kick someone out and them to take them to court, because they can't win this.
Well, they can, legally, they can.
Well, for example, they try.
What do you think they meant when they talked about controlling our borders? Because our borders are controlled. I think that was a synonym for chucking people out, Edward.
I think that this wasn't on the cards. When they talk about controlling the borders, it wasn't about kicking everyone out. It's about controlling from now on, or from, say, 5 years back, whoever comes in and out. And I agree with that. I didn't vote. I've never voted in my life. But I would have voted to leave. My wife would have voted to remain, but she didn't vote either. I've never voted, but I believe it's correct to control your borders, but they've gone well over the top with it. It's not about kicking all the foreigners out. Weren't there foreigners before the EU?
Yes, they were, but they didn't enjoy freedom of movement, Edward. That was the whole point. And of course, the British people who've enjoyed freedom of movement to European countries, European Union countries, rather worried about their future as well, albeit that every time you speak to one, you realise that the situation, with the greatest of respect, Edward, is about 1 million miles away from what you've described. You can insist that people have capital in place, or job offers in place, or fixed amounts of money and security. 3 months it can be the limit in which you're allowed to have a look for work before having to leave again. All the rules were already there, which most British expats will tell you, because they had to jump through those hoops to settle in Germany or Belgium or Spain. But for some reason that may become clear when the history books of the future are written, the British media elected not to tell British voters that before they cast the most important vote for a generation. Anyway, that's it from me for another day. Big love to Rob and all the callers today. Thank you. We covered a lot of ground. Goodness knows what we'll talk about tomorrow.